Hello, I'm James Farrington, and I'm here today for a very candle-lit interview with the founder and chief instigator of the Slashroot Technology Collective, and we are going to be touching on a number of subjects, but mainly tonight we're going to be talking about robots. That's correct, right? I like robots. I have very warm feelings about C-3PO and R2-D2. We're not quite to that point yet, I think. How close do you think we are? I guess I'll just ask. How close do you think we are to robots taking over the world?
Well, the robot taking over the world story, the myth, is a pervasive one in a number of cultures, and going, depending on what things we consider robots as we look back through the history of mythology, a number of myths. R2-D2 and C-3PO occupy a funny space. They're sort of the good brothers.
Yes.
And it's interesting that the assembly of particularly C-3PO, C-3PO's assembly is sort of a lot more mundane than its function, right? It seems it's a particularly lifelike,
right. Irritatingly lifelike.
Irritatingly lifelike, even. It reflects its decade. So how close are we to robots taking over the world? There are a number of mechanisms by which robots might take over the world. One of them is the horror story narrative. Another that's in the horror story narrative, whether it's sort of the Matrix, or there are a number of robots take over the world myths that I think are compelling and worth examining. I think that in an evolutionary sense, there's a different takeover story about robots. This is a takeover story about the human species moving, at least for some period, into a time of epigenetic development through both the mechanisms, the material products, and the source code, the instructions that we give the material products. And this story about robots taking over the world is a story that we're living in right now. We're increasingly seeing systems that are automated, that are following a set of discernible instructions, and that are interacting with the physical world, that have a tactile capacity, have an auditory capacity, have senses, can sense and detect light and proximity, and a number of factors about the environment. So it's important to note that we're seeing now robots being talked about as machines that sense. One can quickly Google robot parts and find a plethora of hundreds, not dozens anymore, but hundreds. It was dozens a couple of years ago, maybe even months ago, and now suddenly it's hundreds and hundreds of robot sensors one can buy for the Arduino platform, and there are a number of other platforms. And so we're using this word sense to describe what our robots are doing. And when they become the sensing mechanism, the sensing vehicle of the human species, I think in a sense, you can say that is a different kind of taking over the world story, because to sense the world really is to take it over in some ways. And so I think that's what we're seeing happen right now. We're living, I think, in a time of that myth coming to fruition.
So recently, I believe it was MIT, but I'm not sure, some college somewhere came up with, they created a near-perfect computer simulation of a human brain on a computer. And the brain, unexpectedly, was not that intelligent. How, in terms of robots, how technologically advanced do you believe they currently are? Especially in terms of intelligence, their ability to reason, their ability for, shall we say, free thought.
Well, let me first say that I am not at the forefront of robot development. I am not a robot developer per se. I don't have my finger on the pulse of the latest trends in robotics the way that somebody at the Penn State Robotics Laboratory, the MIT Laboratory, any of the stuff that's going on in Japan. I think that I'm culturally connected to these, to these outfits in particular and the robot development world in general. But I'm not sure I have a great sense to give an exact pulse. As far as the human brain, I haven't read about the most recent development at MIT, so I'd need to catch up to make any specific commentary on that. I know we've got Ray Kurzweil over at Google now, and saying he's going to be afforded unlimited resources for his AI development. And I believe that he's still talking about a complete simulation, a simulation that he's willing to certify complete. He's still thinking that that's like in 2040, something like that. And there's the understanding of the human brain is not anywhere near complete. It's not, we don't, there's a deep question about determinism, first of all. So let's asterisk that, and we'll come back to that. Before we get to that, there's a question about whether the actual features and qualities and conditions of the human nervous system, how well we can even come up with causal relations at all there. The question of synapses and the gray matter in the brain. We have new developments coming out all the time now that question exactly the role. Neurons are usually the star of the brain, right? But we have other supporting actors and actresses sort of rising the ranks in the mainstream science. And I'm not a brain scientist either, right? I try to have a peripheral understanding of these things because I am very concerned with the future of the human species and the questions of what our brains do and what will the things that we make out of petroleum and plastic and electricity do, and what will the combination of those things do, and the things that we, assuming we continue to have the capacity for making, when we're making, perhaps when we transcend making things from petroleum and plastic and electricity and back into making things with DNA molecules, what will those do? So as far as where are we with robots right now, currently, to come back to the determinism question, many of the most impressive examples of automata are in deterministic systems. And it's not clear, so in Conway's Game of Life, for example, recently someone made Conway's Game of Life in Conway's Game of Life. This is a cellular automata that you may have seen. It has four. It's a game of pixels, and it's extraordinarily simple rules. Start with a matrix of pixels, and if one pixel is alone, it fades out and dies of so-called of loneliness. If it has one or two adjacent to it, it remains alive. If it's three or more, it disappears. And I think there's another rule that if a pixel has exactly three partners, a blank pixel has three partners, it comes to life, right? So based on those rules alone, you can draw on a pixel matrix and watch the results of that automata. And this is a conception of the automaton that goes back. The conception, I'm sure, goes back to time immemorial. It's one that has captivated the imagination of hackers, inventors, mathematicians, and so on since 1970. Chess players, right. So right now we look at what's going on in the inventor space, the hacker space, and you have Arduino, Raspberry Pi, and quadricopter development, and these Raspberry Pi is a complete computer, which is exciting. Generally, the idea is that these various devices have an initial setup before entering a loop, while you exist, do the following. And then a number of sort of methods or even methodologies, methods perhaps in the object-oriented programming sense, and methodologies in the sort of, anthropomorphic sense, for reacting to particular stimuli. So a quadricopter can easily do things like, if the wind is blowing hard from the left, react by, right? Additionally, we have, on the other end of the spectrum, the sort of corporate Android world. I don't mean Android the operating system, I mean, the...
Google and...
Yeah, I'm talking, I guess, about, we have humanoid robots, some of which are, pretty incredible at, bipedal locomotion.
Right.
There's the...
facial expressions.
Well, I was going to talk. I would put those in two separate categories. They both have their own way of being plotted along the uncanny valley. The facial recognition, the robots that evoke facial recognition by the human are very eerie, of course, and have very recently,
creepily human even,
seem to be coming up the other side of the uncanny valley, right, where they're really just looking human and not so creepy anymore.
Yeah.
and that is a major transition. That is a landmark akin to probably the printing press or something on that level, and one that comes fraught with many more complex potential dangers. Thinking about robot rights is one of the very difficult exercises facing us as our species goes through this wonderful transition. I think most of us have a sense that rights are human quality, although we have, because of our compassion, we ground a certain number of rights as applicable to animals, plants, even the earth generally.
Right.
So the environmental rights are a different category that I think apply readily to the material that we use to construct robots in a more abstract way that we'll talk about later. The individual rights of robots as beings is a dangerous concept. And I think that as we build robots that are powerful enough to access a deep part of our brain by being attractive, cute, and evoking an emotional response, surely, knowing the human condition will make robots that are sexual partners. In fact, I think there's some company in Japan that's already on that.
Right.
And it will be, I think, I don't want to say that it will be easy, but it will be dangerous and require vigilance that companies will exploit the attraction. Companies and individuals will exploit attraction and emotional reaction for a benefit.
Right.
And I'm concerned that that phenomenon may cloak itself in robot rights.
Right.
So there's another level then where we talk about, bring up the HAL 9000 example, we talk about the behavior of robots and their capacity to, perhaps in an autonomous fashion, infringe upon existing rights. And here they may be individual rights of yours, they may be the rights of the environment in the environmental sense, they may be some other sort of rights, they may be, for a particularly religious person, the conception may be robot sin. And how do we what do we do about the code then, the source code of the robots that suggests that their behavior fall along some sort of, if not deterministic, then at least causally predictable set of behaviors. And this is a question that requires a great deal of discourse moving forward in time, one that programmers need to start having now and keep having. I think that in general, I think that there is and will continue to be a resurgence of desire for a negative conception of rights. And this has sort of fallen out of favor in...
A negative conception of rights?
The freedoms from.
Oh, okay.
This has sort of fallen out of favor in our modern political discourse in favor of the rights to. And I think it's interesting that when you look at the various existing ethical documents for robots, typically they are first, sort of Hippocratic in nature, that robots will do no harm, and we have obviously violated this in spectacular fashion with Predator drones, and so I think it's interesting that these documents seem to be they seem to emphasize a freedom from, as if the age of the robot requires, or at least suggests, a return to the freedom from as being as important as the freedom to.
You mentioned Predator drones. Those are the pilot. Well, they're drones that are driven by pilots, usually somewhere in America.
They're right. They're remote operated vehicles. That's true. Unmanned aerial vehicles.
As far as robots go, I think Predator drones are. There are other types of drones. I believe Arduino has some copters that private citizens can purchase. They don't particularly have any free will, and I would argue that's an instance of robots doing harm, but really that's an instance of robots doing people's bidding, and in that case doing harm. At what point do you think right now that increases in robot technology are really just an extension of the human condition, are extensions of our current technology and culture? And
an important part about thinking about what robots are, what a robot is when you see it walking down the street, is the notion of the incarnation. And in our Western religious culture, we have an incarnation myth at the forefront of Christianity, certainly, if not the other Abrahamic religions. So the idea of an incarnation, I think, is not foreign. What's foreign about it is understanding it as a creation of man rather than a creation of the gods or a creation of the angels. The Predator drone, for example, you point out, is actually an unmanned aerial vehicle. It's not conducting its own ethical calculations and deciding who to bomb. It is an incarnation of the pilot. It is the pilot. It is the bombs of the Predator drone are an arm of the pilot. The cameras on the Predator drone are an eye of the pilot. There are probably some in the, I guess transhumanist or very, probably not even very far left political types will tell you that the pilot is a like extension of with the command structure of the military, which is an extension of the civic polity, which is right. So, and I don't discount that. I find that compelling in a sense. What needs to be added to the dialogue about predator drones and really anytime you see an automaton or a machine that's following orders, anytime you see it doing bad at the direct behest, in other words, pushing a button with the same intent, not showing really little or decreasing towards zero discernible distinction between the action and the intent. What's missing from the dialogue about that is the importance of start again.
You can start from the beginning of.
Well, I think we got to go into this. This is crucial.
Yeah.
So when you look at a machine of war directly responding to a war button, an attack button, a button of war hostilities being pressed and a program of war hostilities being run, I think that the understanding it as an incarnation of its whichever level you like, understanding it as human intention being fulfilled is the right way to look at it. What we need to think about is, where are we going with our incarnations? When we have simple robot chassis here, not hard to put a camera on a servo so that it can look around, put a GPS and a 3G connection, and now this can rove and roam the world. It's going to go up and down the sidewalks, broadcasting back to your TV, and giving you eyes out there. Not much harder to throw a screen on it, throw an Android or whatever, and have it have the screen broadcast your image,
right,
and talk to people and interact. And now suddenly you are an incarnation in the community, exercising the intent of exercising your intent. Not possible at the moment, but very conceivable in the future, to make the robot human height, and then to make it travel via bipedal locomotion, and then have it have a face that is deceivingly human, and then a face that
can go get you a sandwich.
a face that can a face that we've been talking about, a robot that can go to the bakery and get us a sandwich, and imagine if it had your face and looked like you and moved according to a set of motion control dynamics. In other words, a camera could capture your motions and in real time put those onto the robot, and then imagine dressing it in your clothes and making it so real that people believe that it is you, and so that it is an incarnation of you. Well, at that point, you have satisfied at least a Cartesian sense about whether a robot is you, because if the set of instructions that control your body, if they come from a soul, and I'm not saying I believe this, I'm saying that we need to examine some of the underpinning of what we as a species currently believe about the way we work. But if you have a soul, whether it's sort of an immortal soul, whether it is in some sense just a spirit that is transdimensional in some sense, if there is any part of you that is not your particles, and again, because this belief does exist, it's has been quite a bit of mainstream traction throughout the history of philosophy, then at that point you have become the soul for this robot out there that looks like you, this incarnation of you. In every way, you have become that in the same way that your soul is to you. And so maybe it's not that we are more than our particles. Maybe we are what you see before you. And maybe the soul is you controlling by remote an incarnation, a robot. Maybe that's what maybe the soul is from the future, not from the past, but from the future, and that we as a species are being drawn toward a future by the conception of a soul, which really ultimately is a set of remote controls for you to control a robot. Well, so that may be kind of far out, but it's a useful thought exercise in thinking about how ethics and malice in particular, and benevolence in particular, the sort of the ethics, the situations that enjoy relative consensus. It's a good exercise for thinking about those, because if it's the pilot is the soul of the bomb, suggests something about the pilot and about the bomb that I think is an important perspective to be part of the discussion.
I want to take a second to think here. Well, it's already off. What is that? Still. Okay. Do you want to talk about time wave zero novelty theory?
Yeah.
Okay.
Man, I want to do a different thing.
A different thing? A different interview or a different interview?
I love what we have.
I love what we have. Mm-hmm. You want to go in a different direction?
I want to play a guitar.
This is going to be like part comedy sketch.
Are we taking ourselves too seriously?
We are taking ourselves a little seriously, but it makes for a good interview.
Okay. Like, if you want to keep it in the conversation that we were just having about, the...
I don't remember exactly how I started off the original question.
Well, because I was talking about how, like, the soul may have always been sort of an echo from the future,
right?
Yeah. Which I think is plausible. And then you kind of riffed on that to be like, well, from the future, then there must be sort of this time attractor thing,
Okay, so I should state it like that, you think?
I guess, whatever you think. It's hard when you just say, tell us about time.
Tell us about time.
It's a little like...
okay. So, you mentioned this idea of a soul from the future having an effect on us and being related to our action in some way. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And is that inspired by Terence McKenna or?
McKenna's idea. Depends how you sort of take what he thought about December 2012. Obviously, his program, Time Wave Zero, displayed no data. It showed no change in the wave subsequent to that date, which he originally, apparently, from the I Ching had a date that was close, and then when he saw that it was so close to the Mayan calendar, he was like, well, that must have been what I was looking for. So, already, McKenna was not... He
was not arguing for the end of the world, so to speak.
That I believe. I also believe that he wasn't terribly wedded to the facts, and he didn't need the facts to be. Even though I think he was making an empirical case with an understanding that he was just entertaining this case, which he often said. Is December 21st, 2012 a special date? It's past us now, but yeah, I think it was a special date. Because it was on a lot of people's minds. I think that's what made it a special date. And I think that a lot of what in the 90s, the late 90s, here, McKenna talking,
a lot of what he thought was going to be so strange and bizarre about the world, the enormous rush of novelty, well, that's exactly what the world is today. That's like what it's like.
Right.
You know, when he said that all, you know, that it will be, you know, noticeable because it will be the main topic of conversation, the pace of change. Well, absolutely, that's exactly right. That's what it's like to live in 2013. The main topic of discussion among these monkeys is how fast they're changing. And I think that so then, are robots being pulled forward by time, is the question. And I look at the answer to that question kind of this way. Again, riffing right on McKenna. You know,
And a guitar.
And a guitar. Let's say, and again, this doesn't need to be true for this to be an exciting thought exercise. That's what's great about these. But let's say it is true that this conception of physics that puts the universe at some 6 or 9 billion years old, the Earth at 6, the universe at 9, thereabouts, although there's disagreement and change about these numbers. And we're in agreement with the general narrative that at the beginning, and for a long time, like a third of the life of it, it was just a swarm, a plasma swarm of energy that only later became capable of atomic dynamics and only later of chemical dynamics, billions of years later. Well, this means that for half of the universe, nothing happened. Nothing happened.
Right.
And then in the last, you know, in the last 60,000, we have something that seems like humanity, and with an absolute rush of telescoping crescendo following that, with the agricultural revolution and then the industrial thing. I don't know if I'd call it a revolution, and then so suddenly, only 150 or 200 years later, a different paradigm yet. This information thing. Things are going. I think that our notion of the eschaton as Westerners is built around Armageddon, apocalypse, you know, and shit blowing up. That's what we think the end of the world is.
Robots
That's what we think.
over.
Robots taking over, right? Our myths about the information age, at least those that are sort of eschatological, are apocalyptic. Are based on Armageddon.
Right.
Are based on the rapture.
A version of change wherein all change becomes bad.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, a version of change. I mean, I hadn't thought of it that way, but that's the sort of downward slope. That's what the crescendo of novelty looks like to that mind. But I think that that's not the only way to interpret I don't think that's the only way to feel the eschaton.
Right.
I think that it is also the transition into unrecognizability. We don't recognize our offspring. Robots, for sure. Computers and the internet and source code in a more metaphorical way. Robots are super easy to see it. We don't think of these as our offspring. We've become unrecognizable.
Or extensions of ourselves in some form.
That's easy. People see that one, I think.
Right.
People see the extensions of ourselves thing. Yeah, it seems like the conception of the material of the information age being an extension of ourself, an extension, extending, as you know, in the sense of some kind of inheritance, almost a template inheritance kind of way. That's pretty widely accepted. But the idea that we as a species, our evolution, the track of evolution we're on, you know, so the track of evolution for the ball python involved coming to a dynamic equilibrium and having a certain strength and capacity and place in its ecosystem so that it hit a stride and stayed there for quite a long time, right? I mean, ball pythons look pretty similar to how they've looked for quite a while. you know, for us, if the robot is an extension of ourself, it's a part of our species in the sense that if a ball python had a similarly bizarre extension, we'd think of it as part of the ball python species. And in that sense,
if they shedded their skin and the skin was able to complete action.
well, they how about just shedding their skin anyway?
Right.
Is there any doubt that ball python skin is of the ball python species?
Right.
You know?
Or a beaver dam's part of, it's not really part of the beaver, but, you know, it's an extension of their technology.
Yeah, I mean, a beaver dam is closer to one of our houses, one of our structures, which I think you can arguably simply say is the effect that we have on stuff. But now we're talking about putting our intention into verbal equipment. You know, equipment whose mission is to execute verbs rather than to be a noun. I think that's yeah, that's something different. That's something different, and I think that the evolutionary significance is enormous. It suggests that the way that change is going to happen, and I don't mean to be so human-centric, but I'm going to say the way that it happens on this planet, because we are the thing that's changing quickly. The way that it's happening on this planet then is not through genes for a little while, right? It's through these memes, through the epigenetics, and that is a fast change. It's a change that happens. It is the change that comes right out of the hacker inventor spirit, and it puts the hacker inventor, the programmer, the mechanic, really in some ways the polymath. It puts that role as sort of coterminous with the role of the magician, the shaman, right? I have Diego Arena Quinones, a friend of mine, a phenomenal activist in New York City, told me once that I had magician eyes, that I could see things he didn't see. And he was just talking about being able to read Python, being able to read simple source code. And he immediately saw this as magic. And he, I mean, he's really with it. I mean, he really has a good understanding. He's a very solid, straight-talking activist. And he immediately, accurately, I felt accuracy in his energy, saw that this is actually magic. And magic is not supposed to be a thing that we do. That's what makes us not God. Or in some cases, not an angel. In some cases, angels are capable of magic. Or a wizard. Absolutely. That's true. But wizards are in the Western story of wizards are only, wizards are suddenly very okay in our culture, right? This is maybe another call backward in time that wizards suddenly are okay, right? But they're not really any wizards in like the Bible, right? They're not really any wizards in the creation myth is our creation myth, and when I say our, I mean the Western Judeo-Christian. Our creation myth is we don't have room for wizards. And so what's the creation myth of the robots now? If there's this new thing, this new species that's sort of we're creating, right? We kind of have, the reason that it seems like magic is because I have magic over this species. We are its creator. And so we suddenly, I mean, we don't want to be gods, I don't think, as a programmer.
I certainly don't.
I think we all should. That's kind of what open source is about finding a way so that none of us has to be a god. Because I think that we see the danger and destruction in that. And so what we're maybe turning into, something like a shaman perhaps, or maybe something like an angel. Maybe sort of something like a servant, an advisor, or a guardian, or any of the roles that angels play. I mean, in some cases,
a mentor, maybe.
A mentor.
A midwife. for the robots to develop?
The midwife. Is there a midwife angel myth? Loki was a mass murdering angel, right? So these are all myths that we may play because we have magic over the robots, and so it's important that we study what, if we may have to be angels, or we may have to be shamans, or we may have to be we may have to be other creatures that live in the various mythology about bringing a new organism into the world. If that's so, if we have to live through that story because robots are a new thing, then we need to, develop strength consistent with those myths and those stories, and we need to be inspired by and ready to act out the best parts of those myths and those stories.
Stopped. Yeah, it's full. Should we keep going?
Yeah. You can take this one out of the Raspberry Pi and do it all again.
The whole thing? Okay. Does it need,
Hope we at least have audio of all that through the...
you want to change this? Or you're playing guitar? Is this one here?
No.
It's this one.
No, wait a minute. You'll have to now press menu.
Okay. Just a moment. I'll be right back. Navigating the menus here.
Is your tablet going?
Yes.
Recording? Audio?
Yeah, it should be still recording audio. I have to go to menu.
Yeah.
Press menu. I'm just gonna check the time here. 12. Okay, we got a while. I'm not terribly
So
concerned.
look at the screen here.
Yeah.
It'll be easier if you turn the screen around and...
Okay.
If you have to go to the menu on the left, go one to the left with the four-way,
Okay.
and now press set.
Okay.
Did that take you to a sub-menu?
It's not really doing anything.
Yeah, let me see.
Okay.
Oh yeah, no, you don't press set. You just go down here to format. I guess that is the camera making that sound.
Pick up from somewhere, or
Whatever you want to do.
So, I understand you have an event coming up.
I have an event.
Slashroot, excuse me, the Slashroot Technology Collective, we have an event coming up, and it's going to be on Tuesday, and it's called the Robot Rebirth. Could you talk about what's going to happen there for a moment?
Can you ask the question again? I was thinking about the we thing. I think maybe at this point, since we're like sitting down playing instruments, we need to just like take off any pretense that
this is like a serious interview.
We'll just talk like
shit's just going in a direction, man. Just
Right.
flow with it.
Right.
Okay. The Slashroot Technology Collective, of which you and we our both members, is going holds many events. One of which is coming up next week, next Tuesday, just after many of the college students return here to New Paltz. We are going to be, doing some things with robotics. It's, I believe, called the Robot Rebirth.
That's what I'm calling it. I think everyone kind of has their own name for it.
Okay. Would you like to talk about that? Maybe.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. Rebirth is about ushering in this age by grounding it in a set of myths. So we're discovering at first we thought to change Orion into a robot, right? And then we thought, well, how about we just discover that it's been a robot the whole time? That seems sort of cleaner somehow, right?
Right.
I think it's good to. So we'll be discovering that the whole time it's been a robot. And in order to facilitate the sort of, application of this transition, we're gonna take some, RC cars and chassis and whatever, and attach Arduinos to them, other robotic boards, and we're going to cause them to be reborn.
Okay.
And it's, we're gonna have, 3 hours, probably, yeah, we're gonna have 3-hour hacking session, then so 3 hours of open mic storytelling and watching a few videos, and it's gonna be interesting. I think it's gonna be very interesting. My hope, not just for the Robot Rebirth event, but for this, the rebirth. I'm saying I think that the Robot Rebirth begins this day. My hope for the Robot Rebirth era is that that we despecialize and move past the idea that robots in particular, technology in general, is the domain of one particular persona. Usually the programmer, occupies that role, and the programmer is a very distinct persona, probably my persona for sure. But I think that the programmer is really ready to share the magic, and so it's my hope that the birth of a brand new baby robot, is a significant enough story, culturally significant enough that that it draws the attention of people in the political sphere, in the agricultural sphere, anything you can imagine, right? People with all kinds of ideas, I hope are drawn in by this event. And when I say this event, I mean, the sort of grandiose event of the robot rebirth in the species. I'm not talking about the specific event in New Paltz, although I hope that this event does that. Which there will be, yes.
But the fact that robots are being reborn or being born and developing into new. You're excited about, in other words, the rebirth of all robots or rebirth of technology everywhere, not just here in New Paltz.
Yeah, well, I mean, excited about the event of evolution being discernible not by an analysis of the gene swarm, but by the epigenetic swarm, the mimetic swarm. And I think a birth of a robot is a huge signifier of that.
So glad you said that, because it reminded me of that one more question that I wanted to ask you. Do you believe that the future of technology and robot technology is going to continue in the direction of the current building supplies, metals, electricity, or do you feel that biotechnology or genes are going to affect the future of robotics?
Then we need to handle, we need to absorb a story about things that feel synthetic being part of us. We need that right now, because without that, we'll be ill prepared for what you're talking about, which is what obviously happens next, which is when 3D printers can print living specimen with according to a high-level encoding framework written in DNA. In other words, a programming language that allows a class abstraction over actual DNA molecules. And this is not difficult to conceive of or imagine. This will happen. This will happen. At that time, we need to be prepared for a new set of myths. Okay. It's hard to see. That's it's upon us. It's upon us.
It's coming.
It's here, in a sense.
It's
people. I mean, it's happening. It's just it's not in the home, but it's in a sense, and it's not the way I've described it in terms of the abstraction. But what is here is very intentional, unambiguous, and harsh. Sort of very. Harsh the way, for Linux users, harsh the way, kill -9 is harsh in a way that it, using extreme authority,
right,
making changes to the genes of agricultural products, and their that's now. That's now. That's not coming soon. That's now. That's happening. It's been happening for years now. It's new. Newer than newer. It's newer than we've really thought about. Only a few years old. But it's so that's already here. What's not here is an easy, simple abstraction for anyone to use in a 3D printer that can print genes in the way that you're talking about. But yeah, we're going to build robots out of DNA, right? Sure,
right.
Of course.
It's
yeah. That part is so. We've got to be ready to absorb a whole new set of myths in addition and problems that are about that.
Do you have anything? I think we covered most of the things I was thinking of. Do you have anything you'd like to bring up?
My arm is asleep because the stool's so low, so my arm is like over the guitar.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. We gotta talk about the genetic thing, we gotta talk about the science of that a little bit for a second.
Okay.
Somehow, about the not the hard science of it, although that's interesting, but that I'm not ready to go. I don't know enough to go. I'm not ready to go all the way into that right now. But about at least what it means for the field of development in robotics and making. Right? It's making.
Making stuff.
Yeah.
So I mean, what what does it mean? The field of making stuff. I think making automatons, from genomes, is a superior idea than cloning or anything of that sort. I think it's more creative. I think it is likely more ethical.
Well, how about, let's imagine what does Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park say about that? Right? Because Jurassic Park is this story, kind of, right? A little bit.
It's a great movie.
Yeah, absolutely, and it does a good job with a certain myth of putting it out in the culture in a way that's easy to discuss. And, it's a robots taking over the world myth, right?
Well, okay, yeah,
right. Oh, sure, absolutely,
yes,
absolutely. It also has it has the inventor as midwife. Has that scene, right? Very distinct. Common. Why do we see these all over the place? We're scared of. There's a fear of robots being a destructive, destructive in a grand sense, a destructive child, and sort of marring our reputation on this planet. How did those monkeys do? Oh, they had a little bastard, I'll tell you. And so having that power is enormous. Having the power, we're talking now about making robots out of genes, making robots that are biological in nature. We can make any organism. We understand genetics. We can make any. We get that power. Now we can use it. That takes. We need to cultivate an enormous discipline in our art, and I hope that, I know, we seem pretty committed to it. I hope that we get a lot of people who become that committed to thinking about freedom and justice, thinking about using these things with, whatever, the opposite of reckless abandon. Right. Using these things with enormous pride,
pride.
Really, it comes down to discipline and good purpose, right? That's really the opposite of reckless abandon. That's going to be tough. Yeah. Looking good.
All right. Thank you for joining us. It's going to be pretty long. Okay. Okay.
The next question is, like, if that's gonna be a really funny video unfiltered. That's like the funniest way to watch that.
Oh, shit.